This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 247 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm recording here in stormy, rainy, windy Perth. We're having this seemingly endless winter, for Perth, where we usually have like record hours of sunshine compared to other places. It's kind of seems very endless. So hopefully you can't hear too many stormy noises in the background, but we'll see. So today's episode is about the benefits of family travel. And you'll know, if you're a regular listener, I have spoken in previous episodes, probably at length, about the benefits my son has got from travelling, as well as how I've benefited from being taken travelling as a kid. I'll actually leave a link in the show notes to some of my favourite episodes about family travel and the benefits to taking kids travelling. But if you want to have a scroll back, we feature those topics in episodes 19, 54, 66, 94 and 164, to name a few. It's an important topic to me. But I wanted to reflect briefly on the inability to travel far during this pandemic and the effects that's had on my son. I mean, obviously, and me too. But he's a very lucky kid, and he's usually used to travelling abroad to, a really different culture, different language, really somewhere different to home, at least once a year and sometimes much more. And I think being, stuck here in Western Australia for the last 18 months has been, it's had an impact on him. It's certainly made him, I think, less inspired by life and less confident. He still talks about all our previous trips and experiences a lot, but like me, he really can't wait until we can travel further again. And have a really privileged problem this year and last year were his last years in primary school, and would have been great chances to travel more. I had lots of plans, but next year he starts high school in February, and that does mean that I won't take him out of school quite as often. So that's an annoying pity. But anyway, I know there are many worse problems in the world. So on to this episode's guests. So first up, I chat with Kath and Howie, who run a fabulous YouTube channel called The Museum of Us. I actually first met Kath well over a decade ago, long before my son was born, when we both taught English as a foreign language at the same school here in Perth. Kath and Howie met as travellers at a hostel in Edinburgh, actually, and they got together, and then their little girl Aisha came along. They travelled with their daughter a little bit as a baby, but then they had a really big trip when she was about 2, and they spent 3 months living in Thailand. And they realised there were a lot of benefits to that and a lot of differences too when you're travelling with a little girl in tow. And that's what we talk about in this chat.
So having Aisha with us from the moment we hit the airport opened doors that we didn't even know existed. Mm-hmm. It was like we had a blonde-haired visa.
A very small blonde-haired visa, yeah.
From the moment we landed and we were in the queue to go through customs or go through the passport section, and someone came and grabbed us out of this line, and we were a bit nervous, what's going on? And they'd actually taken us out of the line and put us through with the Thai nationals so that we could be fast-tracked.
Yeah.
Because they just spotted Aisha and went,
let's help them out.
Just adore children.
Yeah, that child-centred culture that Thailand is. And I was thinking about your question about what it is that children learn from travel.
Mm.
And particularly when kids are so very young, that travel at that point is something that's not going to exist in their conscious memory. Aisha doesn't really remember that particular trip, not in any concrete way.
Maybe just memories from discussing it, but not intrinsically her own memories. Yeah.
Exactly. And
photographs.
Photographs and stories, yeah. But one of the things that really struck me, because we did end up renting a house on an island, so we were in one place, because with small children, you have to be in one place.
Yep.
You have to create routine and make it all easy. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy this experience at all. So we landed in this kind of village situation. We rented off a local couple. They had a 6-year-old child, and everyone in the village immediately adopted Aisha, but not us at that point. So with us, what they wanted to do was to offer to look after Aisha, and so that we could go to the full moon party. Everyone kept saying, that we should, their expectation was that we would go to the full moon party or the half moon party or the dark moon party or the new moon party, or the moon parties that existed on Koh Phangan at the time. And we kept saying, no, we don't want to. No, we don't want to. But yes, you can,
you must.
Here.
Yeah. We'll take care of her.
And it took quite some time before someone said to us, if you don't want to go to the full moon party, what do you want? And we said, we want to go to the Wat. And they were like, oh, really? The Wat, the temple. And and eventually then we were then taken to the Wat. And now, of course, we didn't speak large amounts of Thai, and most of the people in the village who we were interacting with didn't speak great English. So there was a lot of interaction that was just languageless.
Yeah, body language.
Body language. So
also, when we got there, I remember they had a female section and a male section as well, so we got split up.
At the
So we were in the same.
Yeah.
We were in the same room, but sitting separately as well.
I don't know what I'm eating. But and also we don't know what this ceremony is, but we are involved in it, and we never did find out because there was really no one who had the language could cross that language barrier for us.
Wow.
So we were invited to that, and then the next thing we were invited to was the inter-island school sports day.
Oh, how fun. Wow.
Yes. And that was different.
That was very different. Yeah, we went across with, our Aussie Kiwi expectations of what a school sports day would look like.
Yeah.
And there were, it really wasn't. It wasn't about the sport at all.
What happened there? I'm so intrigued by this.
The main thing was a parade.
Oh.
A street parade.
That was the main event.
The main event.
Well, the local mayor.
The local mayor was in drag.
There was a lot of drag going on, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like small kids.
And a lot of all the kids were in costumes, very Mardi Gras style costumes, and there was a lot of drumming and marching, and this was the main event, and a market that went along with this parade was the main event, and then there was some sports.
I wish my son's sports day was like this.
It's amazing.
But the catering as well, the size of the pots that the curry was being served in, you could use as a bath. These things are huge.
That's
Probably
amazing.
Two people like spa style.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of experience only happened, do you think because you had a kid, you were really much more adopted by the locals, and so you got to have these experiences that no one else would usually?
There was no way we would have ended up there without Aisha.
Yeah.
The contact through her.
Absolutely. And even then, as I said, it took a while to break through, I guess, their experience of phalanx prior to us was so different to what we were actually looking for, which was just a sneak into their real life was what we wanted.
But we were also there for 3 months. Was it 3 months?
Yeah.
So we rented this house for 3 months, and we were there. We rented a little moped. Just around on, and that's another thing. The difference between there and say here. We were riding around on this bike, the three of us. So I was driving it. Kath was on the back, and Aisha was sandwiched in the middle.
As a 2-year-old.
I can't believe it now.
No helmets. And she would quite often fall asleep as well when we were riding on. So I wouldn't dream of doing that over here.
Oh, no, not for a split second. Yeah. But that's the thing of the 3 months, being there for that longer time, that immersion, that slow travel approach. So much good stuff comes out of that doesn't come out of your average to a, touristy kind of trip.
I was reflecting on the idea of what kids learn from that, and even at such a young age. And I think it is that, there is an exposure to language, even just the existence of other languages and the existence of other cultures, to understand that what is normal around you is not the only normal. And really struck us that towards the end of that time, or at some point when we were down there, that Aisha said, no, use my Thai name. And I said, what's your Thai name? And it was I Sung.
Right.
Which was, very much like knowing about Thai pronunciation. That's Aya Sung is how she heard her own name. Yeah. And I actually called her that for a couple of years after.
That's so cute. Kath and Howie and I actually went on to discuss the fallacy of people who say, why take kids travelling if they don't remember it? And because we're in agreement on that. I always say, if that's a reason to not travel with them because they won't remember it, well, then we should just put them in a box in the corner for at least the first 5 years of life. If stuff they can't remember isn't important. Because, of course, when they're young children, every experience they have shapes them, and travel experiences often even more so because they're different to the usual routine. So, I think that even very young children benefit massively from being taken travelling, and I know I've seen that with my own son. Now, my next guest is Kaitlyn Jain, and she travels with her husband and 4 kids, just to add to the challenge level. And we also chatted about how having kids brings us all sorts of bonuses and benefits when we travel.
I really love travel, and as I mentioned, I studied abroad in Australia, and that was my first time traveling, and so I wanted to visit a new place every year. And so when I had children, I decided that wasn't going to stop. And bringing children abroad is quite an amusing experience, and it's a lot of fun, and it's not nearly as hard as people think it is. Mm-hmm. And so one of the lessons that I've learned is, first off, that there are so many differences between cultures, but at the same time, there's so many similarities. And so when I studied in China as well, I noticed the potty training is very, very different. And how they potty train their children is very different than how they do it in the United States. And then when I went to Scandinavia with my children, they potty train super early. And so it's just interesting to see how different things like that are. But on the other hand, parents are all the same. We're all doing the best that we can with our children. And my daughter had a complete meltdown when we were in Finland. And complete meltdown, just crying in the street. And I was panicking, didn't know what to do. And the people there were so helpful. They were so friendly. And this woman bent down and she's like, hello, little girl, how can I help you? And, that would never happen in the States, or at least where I'm from. And then some man ran out and he's like, oh, I own this cafe. Can I give her a juice box? And another man's like, oh, I've got these gummy bears. Can I give her some? And, in the United States, we're taught don't accept candy from strangers. But when I'm abroad, I'm like, please, anyone help me. Any help I can get would be appreciated.
Although with all these lovely offers, she's probably going to want to have a meltdown every day.
Yeah, her sister was with her, and she's like, oh, right, I get free candy. Specifically speaking to traveling with children, I will say that when you travel with them, you have to go much slower. And so I love to pack it in. I love to see whatever I can see. But when you travel with children, you have to go at a much slower pace. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you're experiencing things more deeply, because you're experiencing it through them, you're experiencing it through yourself, and then you're seeing things that you might not have seen otherwise. And so one example is we were in the Azores, which is an archipelago off the coast of Europe. And so I'd never heard of it, but apparently Europeans know all about it. So we're at this playground and it overlooked the water and it was just so beautiful. And I never would have stopped to see that view if I hadn't had my children. But since I had my children, we were there and we sat there for maybe an hour and let them play. And I was just taking in, watching the culture and seeing how kids of other another culture play and, seeing what the parents are doing. Are they playing with their kids? Are they watching their kids? Are they drinking coffee? Just experiencing something that I never would have even considered experiencing because, I have to go to this museum. I have to go to this site and whatever. But when you have children, you have to slow down and you get to see these things. In another country, my husband was running a marathon. And so I had 4 hours or so just to entertain my kids. And so we found every playground along the route. So we're, every hour we'd see my husband and then we'd go find a playground and we got to check out every single playground in that country and not country, in that city.
Yeah.
And so it was just fantastic. So I would say that when you're with children, it might be a little bit less adventurous, but it can be just as rewarding or even more so rewarding. Mm-hmm. So, and also you're opening that chapter to them so that when they get older, they will want to travel. They will want to see things as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a little bit sad. My son's 11 now, and so he's not. What we do is take a soccer ball, and he's happy to find an oval and kick a soccer ball around, but he doesn't really want to hang around in playgrounds anymore. And I loved when he was littler, and we would go to a playground, in a foreign country, and other. Just him. And so other kids would, he'd just start playing with other kids and they didn't have to have a common language. They would just, figure out how to play together. And I just loved watching that. It's such a special thing. And you're right. Also just sitting in a playground and, being able to relax a bit while you're traveling and just observe what's going on is fabulous. So I miss that now.
Yeah. And when you're in that playground, like, at least for me, they recognize I'm American. And so people would come up to me and ask me questions. And I remember this one woman in Estonia was like, so why are you here? And I was explaining to her, well, we were here and it was an easy boat trip and whatever. And, just experiencing that and hopefully, showing some positive sides to our country as well, because there's some negativity. And so it's important for us to get out there and just travel and see others and meet others and just have those experiences.
I have really fond playground memories from all over the world traveling with my son. And it's true that it's a situation where you're really likely to get chatting with a local. I think, the fellow parents are also sitting around waiting and watching their kids. And there's also something about having your kids nearby, I think, for both parties that makes you kind of really non-threatening. And you have something immediately in common, even if you don't have a lot of common language. So I have definitely had interesting chats with locals when I am at a playground watching my son. Finally, for this episode, I chat with Deb Haile and her son Jonah about this topic. And I started out by asking Deb, what does travelling teach kids and why do we take them travelling?
I think travelling is a must for every child. I know that obviously there's costs and financials that goes into it and others that, can't do it as often or even at all, but they should make it as like a priority, just because I've seen it in my own son of how traveling has taught him not only the benefits of learning new cultures and languages, but also geography. He now knows, all the different, not only continents or countries, capital cities, where he wants to go. He's very vocal about, that's not too close to that country, so we should go out. Like he was like 4 or 3. We went to South Africa and then we went to Dubai and then we went to Eritrea. And then he was like, so I didn't tell him. When we got to the airport is when I told him what we were doing. And he's like, so we're in Africa. We're going to leave Africa and then come back to Africa? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, good point.
He's like, we're going to go to the United Emirates and then come back. And I was like, yes, exactly.
It's just the way to get there. But yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, how young they can learn that geographical knowledge? My son's the same. It's incredible what they can remember. Mm.
And they enjoy that as well. Like he enjoys that a lot. And also I think it inspires curiosity and adventure, and that it teaches them to be brave and responsible and independent. It also teaches them to be that anything is possible in life, and they can really reach the stars, and they can live anywhere in the world, and they can be anything they want to be. So I think it broadens the way they think. I do see the difference between Jonah and others that have not traveled and that have not seen anything. And, especially when we do we're authors, as you know. So when we do our book tours and we are in different schools, and Jonah asks them, our first book was in Thailand. So we were able to go to many different schools for book reading.
Oh, cool.
And Jonah would ask them, do you know where Thailand is? And then they're like, in Florida?
Oops.
Is it a city in Florida?
Oh, no.
So it was really funny and kind of interesting because they were the same age as him.
Amazing.
And they had really no clue. And this was when he was 5, 6. So it teaches them so much more, and makes the kids just be adaptable. That's another thing I think kids learn. Like I said, things don't go according to plan. So kids have to adjust and go with the flow too. So that teaches them how to be adaptable. And that, I think those are also lessons that you're learning during your travels that you can do in your everyday life that you need even as an adult.
Yep.
I think those are some big ones that I would say have been helpful and taught Jonah, and I see the difference basically. And just also responsibility, because when I make him pack his own bag, of course I check it, but he packs it, he makes sure that it fits and doesn't fit, and he says, oh, okay, I don't know. And then in the plane, he's responsible for all his items, his hats and anything he's wearing, sunglasses and his backpacks, and then he, when we're traveling, he's also responsible for packing it again and, going to a different city or a different country that we're hopping to and doing the same. So it teaches them kind of some sense of ownership and responsibility, which is a good lesson for children. What did you learn?
I like to travel because I learn new languages, new cultures, new types of food that we could make at home. So especially the culture, so that I know what they wear, what they eat,
and act,
and
how
they talk, what's their language. Yeah, so that's the main thing for me, the language and the culture.
Yeah, and the food.
My son, I'm sure, would also list a bunch of similar reasons that it's important for him to travel and all of the benefits he gets. They're pretty endless, I think. And I know as he's got older, teachers always say to me that his general knowledge is astounding and his geography skills are impressive. And it's not the be all and end all, but it's something that's pretty important to me, and I really like that he's acquired that through traveling. Of course, there's also plenty of benefits that I get from travelling with him, some of the things we've talked about in this episode already, and also he's just an awesome travel companion, so thanks, mate. All right, so that is it for our episode about the benefits of family travel. I would love to say a big thank you to my guests. So first up, we chatted with Kath and Howie from the Museum of Us, and you can check out their YouTube videos at youtube.com/The Museum of Us. Most recently, they walked the Bibbulmun Track here in Western Australia. It's and the videos they created about this long walk were just fabulous, really, really intriguing and interesting, so well worth a look. I then chatted with Kaitlyn Jain. Kaitlyn has a book called Passports and Pacifiers, Travelling the World One Tantrum at a Time. And she even did mention one of the tantrums in this book, in this episode today. So you can find her at KaitlynJain.com. She's KaitlynJain.com. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Deborah Haile and her son Jonah, and they have a website and have written a few books about travel-related things, and you can find them at tinyglobalfootprints.com. Don't forget, of course, we have the Facebook group and the LinkedIn group now for Thoughtful Travellers. In Facebook, just search for Thoughtful Travellers. And to find the LinkedIn group, if you're not sure, just go to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn, and that will link you up with it. I'll also leave links to all of this stuff in the show notes. And for this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/247. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.